I have it summarized here. Being a good declarer is about winning and losing tricks in the appropriate order to the appropriate person.
Yes.
This will be on order.
That's like the simplest way of if you and what that little sentence does is it forces you to think about things like
Where do you want the lead to come from?
right, who do I want to win this trick? You know, where are my tricks coming from? Where are my losers, right? A lot of advanced plays are based off the idea that you like lose tricks early, or you lose tricks to the right person, or you avoid losing tricks to one certain person. So, and we can really break it down into these kind of four basic categories, where we have finesses, being able to rough tricks, ducking tricks to the right person, and unblocking either, you know, R honors or, you know, if you're a defender, you know, your high doubleton, things like that. Most plays come down to some portion of these four, as far as basic stuff.
Can I
So,
tell you one hand that we had Friday? My partner put me in a 5-bid, missing 3 aces, not a void,
ooh,
and I made it.
you
I remember that. I made it too.
establish that long
I
suit,
led up, I had a singleton heart, and I led up to the king queen,
and they
and
played
they
low.
didn't take it,
Yep.
and I made it.
It's actually funny you say that because that's something we might mention next week in the advanced classes. I'm not sure, like there's so many things I could talk about. I'd want to figure out, like, you know, how many deceptive plays do I want to put in there because there's a lot of interesting ones.
I
You
love
know?
it.
So the first example here isn't on that set of boards, but so just to show you, South is playing 4 hearts, okay?
Is that what's on the board?
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding me, okay.
You guys,
Not real well.
let me do this.
No, will you be this much closer and I can read
Well, we just moved the table over there.
Well, here, just do
You're
this.
right in front of the screen. How about that?
Okay, that works for me.
I could go outside and read it.
I'm sorry.
Well,
Grab that side of the table.
It's not gonna work.
Yeah, okay. Okay, we're good. Oh, thank you guys so
How about
much.
that?
okay, now wait, here, you don't, you want your, I'm putting your can over here.
Okay, here's your,
Actually, that probably is.
Take that
and
chair.
then I can just kind of work and do.
Since we have a little intimate.
You want that too?
So here, South is playing 4 hearts.
oh, that's the one you put in the email.
This
Isn't
one?
it? Didn't you put one in the email and you asked what the bid would be?
Okay.
One no trump on one side and,
3.5 losers.
Probably a different set, but show me afterwards because
okay.
it's sad, but I can't remember.
Not sad, what's sad is you're so darn young.
Yeah.
That's encouraging.
So-
It's not just us.
West leads the diamond, and whether it's right or not, continues 3 rounds of diamonds. Okay, South roughing. So the question is here, how do you make 4 hearts?
You already lost 3 tricks, right?
You've lost 2. You roughed the
Two.
3rd one.
Oh, okay.
So the question is, what is South's best line to make 4 hearts?
Full trump.
Okay, so that's a good first step, and it's, you know, we all heard this before, but the first thing to do normally is to draw trumps, unless you have good reason not to. There are a lot of times where you won't want to, and usually that involves roughing a loser that you're going to, you know, lose immediately if you don't do something about it right away. Being able to identify that is really more about considering each suit individually in the beginning. That's just a good habit to get into. And again, that's the base for a lot of more advanced plays that really aren't advanced as much as just they take more planning, right? So, seeing that there really isn't any fast loser for us to lose here, right? Because we got control in the black suits, we decide to pull trumps. So, since you started with 10 cards and you have the ace, king, jack, you can afford to cash a high heart first and see if he says queen, 3rd of hearts. If he does, then you can go over to the dummy and finesse. Otherwise, you're just going to do what South does in the hand and draw trumps, right? So, what do you do next?
After you draw trump?
Okay, do we know what their discards are, that 7 of spades?
It's not really important for the sake of the lesson, but they would normally you would discard attitude as your first priority.
Okay, so
Okay,
you
sorry.
have to, you possibly have to lose a spade and 2 clubs?
One call.
2.
You got ace king.
Well, 1, okay, but that's still too many. We have 2 more
So
tricks
you gotta
to
finesse, you
lose.
gotta finesse the king
King
of
of spades and a
Right.
What do you do if
lose.
the finesse doesn't work?
Right, so
Well,
that's the
If
thing.
it's not-
So
if it's not gonna work, it's not gonna work.
the beautiful thing about
Well,
finesse
you're gonna bring it around to your hand, so it is gonna work.
right, the beautiful thing about finesse is that it's a free shot, right? Because the way it works is that we're taking advantage of where the king of spades is. Because as you can see, the club suit, we have 3 cards in each hand, and so you're not going to get an extra trick out of this through, say, running a bunch of clubs. Somebody's going to hold higher club at the end.
Yeah.
There's just no way. Trumps are all good. You know, you could perhaps rough a loser. We'll get to that in a moment. But the only real chance here is to make that queen of spades a trick. It's a high card, but it's not quite the highest. So what a finesse takes advantage of, and did I do, okay, good. What a finesse takes advantage of is the position of another higher honor. And since if you lead low from north, East can either play the king now, which gets taken, or you can play low and you play the queen, right? This is sort of like a situation where we're playing through one particular person in the hopes that they do play a certain card. That'll come up towards the end of the set of hands. But it's very straightforward. If the queen holds, then you make your contract. If it loses, then you were going down anyway,
Right.
right? Now, since you guys will appreciate this, there's actually a slightly better line than just finessing the spade on this deal. Can you guys have any guesses what it is?
Yeah,
Lose
get
a
West to
club.
lead a spade.
Lose a club.
Right, so what you want to do here, it's not truly an end play, but it gives you a shot in the case the clubs split poorly or the wrong person wins the club lead. So, because you can realize you can always rough the low spade and dummy. It's not really going to be an extra trick though, because North's trumps are longer. So, what you can do is cash the ace king of clubs,
Lose a club.
right, and then exit a club.
What depends on who wins the club? Oh,
Well, that's the beauty here. So
He's
if
gonna-
West wins the club, he's end played, right? Because he has to either give you a slough and a rough, or he leads a spade. And when West leads a spade, you're not going to ever lose a spade trick here because you're always the last to play.
Yeah.
If West is the king of spades, your queen is the highest of the 3 remaining hands. If East is the king of spades, you're basically being given that finesse you were going to take anyway. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yep.
Now, say East had won the lead, you didn't lose anything. You were still going to lose that club no matter what, right? You weren't pitching a club on a spade. So that's just something that when you get comfortable recognizing end plays, you can see these little extra chances and be like, oh, I don't just have to rely on the 50% finesse. You know, now
Yeah.
this contract makes, you know, a little more than 50% of the time, right?
It's also good if East would take the 3rd round of clubs. Because he'd
But he
have to give you a
can't.
rough
He can't, he
slug.
doesn't.
Well, in
He
this case, had he had 3 clubs.
If East had the queen of clubs, his best return here is a spade.
right.
Because a diamond
Then I have
concedes,
to guess.
right.
Well, then you go for it because you don't have a choice.
Right, and so it's kind of like, I'll try the end play, and if the end play doesn't work, I'll back up on the finesse. And that's why it's a little bit more than 50%.
Mhm.
So, are there any questions on that?
Nope.
That's, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and try the next one. You could pull out the board here, I'm going to bring it
Is
up.
it this one?
Yes, it is.
1.
Mhm.
All right, you said north.
You said
Yeah, south is declare,
South is always going to be the declare.
Okay, we'll switch
I'm going to see if I can get it in the hand viewer link and make it presentable on this, because there we go. Beautiful. Okay. So South declares 7-0 trump through no fault of his own.
Obviously.
And you
I'm
get
looking at it.
and you get the 10 of heart lead, okay?
Okay, then let me look. Let's see what we've got. Ace,
13.
king, queen. You got 5 hearts.
3, 7, 10, 14, 16, 17,
5
21.
hearts.
What is that?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have you guys kind of play along with this.
I'm gonna put these over here.
What do you mean, 7 spades?
7 no trumps.
7 no trump.
Right.
And a spade is led, right?
The 10 of hearts is
Oh,
led.
10 of hearts is led, that's even better.
Yeah.
Okay, can I question the lead?
You can. There's not really anything you need to know about what it signifies. It's usually the 9 or a doubleton. I mean, all you know here is that West is probably making his most passive lead because against 7 no trump, there's not really. You're normally not going to have a trick worth developing. You don't
Right.
have the strength, so your job
The
is
queen
not
of
to give
clubs
up.
and jack of diamonds in my hand are probably not going to develop.
Yeah, so sitting east, or not sitting east, sitting west, what you're hoping will happen is that the player will have to lose that club eventually. If you lead that club, you could be giving up a possible finesse position.
Right.
So West might have led a diamond here on the actual hand, but West decided to lead a heart because North-South showed the heart fit, and that couldn't possibly give away a trick. So, but to the point though, what should South be thinking as far as making this hand?
I want to go home.
And then I don't know.
No, I counted off the top and I have 2 losers off the top.
Okay, you got the queen of spades?
No.
Potential problem?
So if you look at this, try looking at North's hand. You should only really count half a loser, right? Because looking at South's hand, South's ace of clubs will cover North's club loser. South's king queen of diamonds will cover North's 9-8 of diamonds.
Yeah.
And the king of spades covers a spade, and the heart suit's going to establish,
What's
right?
the king of spades?
It's in the South hand.
No, I've got it.
That's
Uh-oh.
why
Okay,
I'm
well,
looking at
hand the king of spades over there.
Get that over
Now you
there.
feel better.
Thank you.
Oh,
A lot better, yeah.
I would
You
too.
have to give her a
Wait a
card.
minute.
Yeah, give me something,
You might
What do I give her?
switch
She's
her a low
trash.
spade.
something trash.
What?
Give
Give
her a
another
low spade. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
what I'm
better.
thinking, huh?
So,
Okay, that looks a little better.
so the question here is, you have a loser you need to deal with. So how are you going to go about doing that? What are your options, right?
What would I do?
Mm-hmm.
I would play down the hearts. See what
Okay.
they flow.
That's probably a good move. And it really isn't going to cost you anything, right? Because the only extra trick you're ever going to get here is either from the spades or the clubs.
Right.
So if you run a few hearts, you don't have to make a discard decision quite yet. You might learn something. So go ahead and play.
Wait a minute, how are you ever going to develop a third trick in clubs?
I know it in clubs.
Yeah,
Yes, and
I'm just
that's what
saying
it's
because
all about.
you can't establish a trick in hearts or diamonds, right? Because
Oh,
the hearts
right.
are all good and the diamonds are all
Yeah,
good.
okay.
So
So the black suits is all you got to work with.
exactly, doesn't mean that a club will necessarily set up a trick. It just means that it should be something you consider.
But
So
more than likely, would you not figure that it would be the spade?
yeah, that'll be what you back up on, right? So go ahead and cash 4 rounds of hearts.
All right, let's just do them all at once, guys.
Okay?
Just lay them down in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
4 rounds. Would you slot the diamond?
No,
Hey, no take backs.
let's go take backs.
The diamond and the club, and you slot 2 diamonds. All right, 3 diamonds and a club, okay?
Okay, so you might get something like this. What East-West pitch here will be sort of important, so you want to
And
keep
then the
track of it.
One more heart. One more heart, you get the slot tag.
So, a good habit for Declare to get into is to be able to count at least one opponent's hand. Because if you know one person's, then you know the other, right? So, here, hearts split 2-2. So, if I was counting East's hand, I would say East started with 2 hearts, right? So, okay, that doesn't really help me a whole lot. But it looks at this point like I have 2 options, right? I have to finesse somebody for the spade, or have to try for some sort of, like, squeeze. Right, which basically, a simpler way to say that is I can figure out who has the spade queen, or I can hope the opponents pitch something silly and my club's good, right?
Really?
Mm-hmm. So, in this situation, you're not ever going to be able to get the opponents to discard something silly, right? Because your clubs are so small, one person can keep the clubs and one person can keep the spade, right?
Okay.
So that club's never going to be a winner. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
So because of that, you have to just figure out where this queen of spades is. So at this point, since you know that's what you're betting on, you're going to just go ahead and cash all of your winners and end with your spades. Your hope is that you learn something about the distribution that lets you know which way is better to finesse, right? Does that kind of make sense? So I want to exit out of this and just
So
play a
we
bunch of
just
tricks
let
ahead.
it close?
I let a heart.
Heart.
That
She's
last
cashing all her
heart.
hearts.
I
Yeah.
cashed all the hearts.
Okay, the hearts are
Those are dead.
dead,
Right.
toast.
And
She's on the board.
she cashed all the hearts.
Yeah, so I'm just going to play a couple tricks ahead here, but so whatever order you decide to cash them in is really irrelevant. But when you cash all your tricks,
See, that makes a problem because I have to keep an entry to the board.
well, see, that's just it. You don't. This is a two-way finesse position,
Yes.
right?
Do
So
I take the queen over the jack or the queen over the 10?
in this situation, it doesn't particularly matter until you end up in this ending, which I'll speed forward to
All right,
here.
so I play
Yeah.
the clubs
You cash
and
in
I
the three
play
diamonds.
the 3 diamonds.
Three
Where am
diamonds
I
and
gonna
five
end
hearts.
up? Where am I have to figure out where I'm gonna end up.
It doesn't really matter. You see why though? Because
Yeah.
Because let's say that you count and East has the Queen of Spades is more likely. You start with the Ace and then lead over. And if West has it, you're going to cash the King of Spades and lead over. So
Yeah.
it's just a question of who's more likely to have it, right? So when you cash your winners, we know that East started with 2 hearts, right?
Okay.
Go on. And
When we-
she slept diamonds,
Okay, so
2 diamonds,
East also only has 2 diamonds.
so that's 4.
The way I'm showing it in this hand is that you cash 3 diamonds and they show out. But
Oh, okay.
in theory, you're counting East's hand and you're thinking, okay, this is what I see. You're building up that picture of the hand they had originally. Does that kind of make sense?
So you know they have
East-
more than three or four spades, but you're still looking for the
You
queen.
still don't know
Right,
which one.
exactly.
It's more
So,
likely to be since she has. a queen.
Except I do know because she slept the 3.
exactly. So, East is 2 hearts and 2 diamonds. And has been pitching a bunch of spades. Now, as just a little hint, if somebody's pitching like 3 or 4 spades, you're not going to see that happen unless they're protecting some kind of a long suit, right? Because if East has like 3 small spades, the better defense would be to discard clubs because he doesn't know which suit he needs to keep
Right.
necessarily, right? That's just a habit to kind of think about. Now, as it happens,
You still have 3 cards in your hand.
East has played at this point, I believe it's 4 clubs.
4 clubs, 3 diamonds.
Yeah.
No, 2 clubs. Oh, East, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, East. So, if East has played 2 hearts, 2 diamonds, and 4 clubs, he has to have 5 spades, right?
Yeah.
You know, maybe even more than that. Just you got to pay
But which
attention.
5?
Right. Well, that's just it. It doesn't matter because if East, I think East actually started with 6 spades. I think I'm miscounting.
6, 7, 8,
You said I had
9.
a club I didn't
3
have.
club, excuse me. Yeah. So East has started with 3 clubs.
So if it's the queen.
Yeah. So the nice thing here is if East is 6 spades, it's always right to cash the Ace of Spades first because if West is the stiff Queen of Spades, it
It'll
falls, and otherwise you're going to finesse East.
Yep.
You might even call this a marked finesse because you know what to do, right? So
How do I, oh, there's 3 cards. What's my 3rd card here? Okay. No, those are dead. Those
Oh.
are dead. Oh, I have another club. Okay.
So does that idea kind of make sense?
Mhm.
Because a lot of beginners will look at this and they'll say, well, I just have to finesse the spade. And they'll guess which way to do it. A slightly better player is going to say, okay, well, I have this guess. And they're going to count out the hand to figure out if one person's more likely to pull
And
the
all
spade
they
than
have
the
to do is
other.
count east,
Right.
okay,
Now,
in this case.
right. One point that should be made is that if South didn't have, say, the 10 of spades, now you don't really have this luxury, right? It's East is more likely to have the Queen of Spades, so you're kind of stuck. Your best play might be to play West for, say, the stiff 10 of spades and squash it, but different discussion for a different day. Does this idea make sense?
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
It's a very basic finesse.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to show you guys this one because I want to move on from finesses.
Where's the board?
Just make sure
Oh,
that's
Right over there.
okay. So
No.
South is in 6 hearts
I think I ended up with 2 cards.
and leads a Jack of Diamonds, which is 1 in dummy. So this situation is one where if you know your math, this should be pretty straightforward. But let's say you don't know any math, okay? You
this-
can count.
This ended up not being.
Yeah, that's
right.
fine.
Okay.
I'll have a look at
There's-
this.
There's too many cards in one of them.
Okay.
They'll figure it out.
So here, north-south need to figure out how to not lose two spades. You guys see that? Because this is
Yeah.
North's hand. The ace of spades covers a small spade, and so there's only the question of, well, are these two spades any good?
Are you in six spades?
You're in six hearts.
Six hearts, okay, six hearts.
So
Okay.
after
And
winning
you
the
have to lose
lead,
the ace of diamonds, so.
Yeah.
you had the
You
ace of
can't lose
diamonds.
spades.
Yeah. So at this situation, what do you think the first thing North should do is?
Full trump.
I agree, right? Because we don't have anything we need the rough urgently, so
Well, you're gonna.
we pull trumps.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now what?
Okay, let's see, you have a singleton. I lead.
Are you on the board?
Are you on, that's just what I was gonna ask.
You are North's on
Yes,
lead.
you're on the board because it's yellow.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess it is the board.
I
Yeah.
lead the four diamonds.
Other hand. Try the other hand. It's the one up here.
Oh, sorry.
It's a spade. You know,
Yeah,
I know how you do.
Yeah. No, I was at the wrong,
So you clearly this is a finessing situation where you need to do the spades, but I see people do something like putting in the queen, and that's wrong. And think about why that is. So playing low to the 10 or low to the queen, it doesn't really matter if East, if East is both honors, right? And similarly, it doesn't matter if West is both honors.
Okay, we're in six hearts, and
Yeah.
we haven't lost a trick yet.
Right.
why
I'd
does
go
it
ahead
not
and
make
lose
a
this.
difference?
So if East is both, you only need to lose. You can lose one trick,
Right.
right? So if East is both of them, whichever one you put in, you're going to, you're going to make a contract. If West is both of them, there's not much you can do
Yeah.
aside from maybe end playing him and just to speed this along. It's not going to happen, right? So the reason that you want to play low to the 10 is because if West wins with the king, then you know you're set. And if West wins with the jack, you can always go ahead and finesse later.
You know where the cards are.
And that's not to say that, like, if you played low to the queen, West could win the king and do the same thing, and you're guessing for the jack. But you get a little bit of luxury if West plays a jack. You can cash out some more tricks. It just feels easier. And you make an over trick whenever East is both of them. So playing low to the 10 maximizes your tricks at no cost to you. Does that kind of make
Yes.
sense? Okay.
You wouldn't cash the king of diamonds and ace of clubs first?
No, you're gonna lose. That's your one trick you're gonna lose. You don't have the ace of diamonds.
Now, you could, right, because you could always afford
No,
the
we
roughs and
cashed
tricks,
the
but
ace of diamonds.
Oh, we had,
Didn't we cash the ace of diamonds?
yeah, you
first?
won the ace of
It was
diamonds.
the first
oh,
trick.
oh, okay.
The opening
Okay,
lead was a
okay,
diamond.
I wasn't thinking that.
One thing you would not want to do, though, is, say, cash all of your winners and then
No.
finesse the spades.
No, you leave one heart on the board.
Right. The reason is because if you do this, then their suits are going to, if they do win the finesse, they'll cash that trick and you won't have any trumps to win it yourself. So,
It gives you rough sluff if they lead a diamond or a club.
if they lead a diamond, yes. If they lead a club, you're going to have to roughen. Well, actually, no. You're out of trumps, so you won't get a rough and a slough. You just are forced
There's
to
no trump.
rough
Well,
it.
if you leave one trump in north.
Yeah, it acts as a stopper. Yeah.
Stopper, okay.
Yeah. So, we'll.
How did Trump
But if
split, by way?
if the ace of diamonds is already gone, and you let them win with the jack of spades,
Yeah,
They have to
then you-
lead a
then
spade to your ace queen, or they have to give you a rough
I
on the
know, but
board
that's two
of a
tricks.
diamond or a club and get
No,
rid of
you're
the
not
queen.
gonna lose.
All I'm saying, you shouldn't do something like this. You
You're not gonna
shouldn't
lose the king.
cash these and then cash all your trumps, right? Because West is going to do something like this, and
Okay, you gotta leave that deuce, right?
Yeah, you need to keep it.
right. You need because if you cash this and the finesse is wrong, then West can cash
They
his
get a
winner.
diamond or a club. yeah.
Right. So, and again, it's one of those things where you need to think about, am I okay with what happens in the end? If you think about this ahead of time and you say no, then you know what to do. And then the last finesse. The last finesse, and then we'll get into the interesting stuff. So, this is another situation where, again, we're in a slam. It's one of those
6
sessions.
hearts, okay.
And if you look at the losers here,
We
we need to
got 12
figure
losers.
out, yeah, so
Ooh.
looking at the north hand, we have, possibly 3 spade losers on a very bad day, right? So the question is, how do we minimize these losers?
Well, you
What's the
gotta
lead?
put in either the jack, you gotta put the jack in.
They led the 10.
They were the 10 of clubs.
So,
When you get to the spades, you gotta put the jack in for north hand.
so after drawing trumps, there are 2 ways to approach the spade suit, okay? So, you can afford to lose 1 trick.
And you want to lose it to east.
You're not really worried about who you're losing it to as much as
Oh,
just
okay.
promoting the jack of spades, right? Because, in this situation, since we're just taking the finesse, I can always get back to my hand with a trump and do it again. It's just a question of who has what honors, right? So, obviously, if East has everything, I'm toast. And if West has everything, it doesn't really matter. So, we consider the possible splits of the honors, right? As the cards lie right now, if I play low to the 9, effectively finessing against a 10, East has to win, and I can take another finesse, right? The alternative is to do what you suggested and play low to the Jack, which this thing won't seem to let me do unless I do this.
We can pretend.
So the reason that low to the 9 is better is because all this requires is the 10 to be over here, right? If East has the king, queen of spades, I was toast to begin with, right? And there's more times where East will have 1 high honor than West will have both the king and the queen. Because they're kind of equal here, right? Because you don't really care if East wins with either the king or the queen, they're both losers. So the percentage here is to play low to the 9, and if East wins with the 10, so be it. You still gave yourself the best shot. Does that make sense?
And if they put in the king or the queen, then you know where the others are.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the nice inferences. So if East wins with the king, he doesn't have the 10. So now you're just backing up on, okay, well, if East is both, like we said, it didn't matter. So we just played low to the Jack and hope that it wins.
But it doesn't mean he doesn't have the queen though, just because he put.
Right, but the nice thing, and this is another kind of advanced idea, is that in a situation where you have to make a contract, sometimes you have to make these necessary assumptions. And so, unless for some reason you had this inference that East could hold the king, queen, doubleton of spades, which would be the only time you would cash the ace of spades here to drop that honor, you need to assume that West has, the queen after East plays the king, because otherwise you're going down. Does that make sense? You shouldn't hope for things or consider things that you can't do anything about. So, on to the next one. So now, if this thing will cooperate, we want to talk about roughing tricks, right? So this will be 1, 2, 3, 4th board. So go ahead and
Yeah, you be easy like that.
South
South.
again?
Please.
It said south is always the.
Oh.
yeah.
No, we're not bidding it, I'm just playing it.
So finesses are one of the situations where you're playing for honors to be in a certain location, but sometimes you have losers that the suit is just so bad you can't really do anything about, right? So in this example, you reach 4 hearts after East, West have shown their spades, and West makes the genius lead of a heart. Don't ask why.
Because it still is.
Right.
I would.
I know.
So, when West leads a heart, what should the declarer be thinking? How are you going to make 10 tricks?
That's gonna cut off your roughing.
Yes, it is.
Let me ask you a question. In the bidding, did they bid more than once, did they bid more than spades?
No, West has overcalled spades. You can see in the top right here. West has
Oh.
overcalled spades, and East is raised
Oh.
to the 3 level.
Oh,
So,
okay, so we don't know that they bid 2 suits.
No, there's, you know that they have spades, but there's no implications of another side. So,
Okay,
and
yeah.
based off of the north-south hands, you would think that it's probably not going to be the case, just because we have so many cards in the other suits.
Yeah, I probably would leave the nine of hearts, because it's top of the series, and it's not gonna hurt any much.
So,
Put down your dummy
Oh.
rug.
how should the declarer think about making 10 tricks here, or perhaps losing only 3 tricks?
What's he got in spades? Oh, he's got 4 spades. Oh, that's us.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, north, south. We don't lose any, lose 1 spade. Don't lose any
One.
hearts.
I guess you're just gonna have to cross rough the spades and
You don't have enough.
Where's the queen of hearts?
on into dummy.
You've got it.
You got it. And,
No, it
it's not on
doesn't
the.
show there. It's not on the thing.
It's not, the queen of hearts is not on the.
On the-
Yeah, the first trick is played here. So,
Oh,
I'm
okay,
sorry, I
okay.
missed it. All right.
All right.
so if you count your winners, which is something I would suggest you do for every contract, the declarer should be able to count 5 hearts, 3 diamonds, and a club as certain winners, right? Because trumps are not going to break 5-0 hardly at all, right? So since you have 9 top tricks, you only need 1 more. So what's the best way for you to make that 10th trick, right? There's actually 2 ways here.
See if you can win the 4th round of diamonds.
Okay, so I agree. So if diamonds split 3-2, the diamond's always going to make a trick, right? What would be another way to make another trick?
Wait a minute, how, there's, you're 3-2 in
Rough the
diamonds.
Right.
Go ahead and lead your jack of spades to your king.
Okay, so it's kind of like a spade finesse, right? So we
Oh,
can
I'm
finesse
still
ace
going
for the ace
the
of
wrong way.
spades.
Sorry.
You're good.
No, I'm not.
So if ace is the ace of spades, you can make a spade trick perforce by leading up to the king. That's a good idea. Is there any other way you can make another trick?
Wait a minute. What, well, you're gonna lose a club.
You have the ace of clubs.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, you have that, we've got the ace of
Mhm.
clubs, so we're not gonna lose a club. We're not gonna lose the diamond, hopefully maybe the diamond's might set up,
Mm-hmm.
but you still can't slug because you're 4-4.
Trump one of your clubs.
Close. If you think about it, if we trump a club in the south hand, we're just roughing this with a trump that's going to be a
Small.
winner, right?
I'm
So
gonna rough a spade in the north hand.
while you're not really taking care of your losers because the ace of clubs covers the 9 of clubs in the south
Right,
hand.
Okay, yeah.
One thing, if you decide to like count winners and losers and you get stuck, always look at the hand that has like more high card points first, because normally that hand has less losers, and you can kind of cross over and be like, oh, okay, ace of clubs, king of diamonds.
Right.
So
Would you rough a spade?
Yes.
Back and forth?
I think that's the best play. Not to say that the diamond won't set up, but if it does, you can always do that later, right? The trouble is when they're leading trumps, you have this issue where if they get rid of all your trumps before you get the chance to lead spades, that opportunity doesn't go away. So let's say worst case scenario, East had 4 diamonds.
But what if his opening lead was a heart?
Right.
Okay, then
If he
you played your spade.
right, that's going to be the correct line.
All
But,
right, and the ace wins it, and he leads another heart.
right, that's what I'm
And
going.
that screws up the cross rough.
But doesn't though, because you only need to rough 1 spade, right? Because that was why we did our thinking earlier. How many tricks do we need? We only need 1 more
Okay,
trick.
okay.
So the reason you're taking advantage of the spades now is if you don't, you're going to lose that timing. So just to show you, the way you're supposed to play it, West wins the spade lead with the ace, leads another trump because he sees what's coming, and declarer says, ha, I beat you, right? He has the timing to do this. He roughs a spade. Now if diamonds split 4-1, declarer is fine. The reason you're taking advantage of this now is because if East had 4 diamonds and you drew all your trumps, you could potentially lose 3 spade tricks,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of the threat here. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
And notice that this is a virtually 100% line because East West have raised spades. Nobody's going to over rough your spade suddenly, right?
Right.
Occasionally you don't have this information, and now you got to think about, well, can somebody have a doubleton, whatever, right? But this is a good tactic. It's very common. You need to take advantage of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So on to the next hand.
All
So
right.
But West was smart to lead.
that's true.
on the
That's
third trick.
yeah. West had the right number of shots or something and figured out to lead a trump,
Yeah.
right? Or he just saw the hand before and said, okay, but.
Well, Phyllis taught me to lead Trump a long time ago.
Especially when they did two suits.
Yeah, well, leading trumps is a good thing to do whenever you're cutting down roughing power.
Most people are afraid to lead Trump.
A lot of people lead trumps whenever it's wrong to do so. And I think that like the adage when in doubt lead trumps is really inaccurate because it's more about, well, what does it accomplish? Here, West says, well, since North has made a limit raise and my partner has raised spades, North is likely to have spade shortness. And since I don't have a suit really worth setting up, and neither probably does partner, I'm going to lead a trump and cut roughing power. That's kind of the thinking
Yeah.
in the defense. But so I showed you that you can rough and dummy, right, with the short hand with trumps. That's virtually always the right thing to do. Occasionally, though, you can rough enough times in the long hand, and it equates to another trick. So go ahead and pull out this hand. It should be.
Who's that?
This is
Should be
fine.
right.
I
Oh,
made
Roger,
that
yourself.
Okay.
You're the doer. What am I, east? West, east. Doesn't
West.
matter.
No, hang on a second.
Well,
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
matter, I was just looking at the book.
Oh, okay.
So on this hand, you end up in four hearts again, because I said so. And West leads a king of spades. Okay? And for some reason, I can't seem to. Okay, that'll work. So, same thing as before. So how should South go about making 10 tricks? Or losing 3,
Okay.
whichever one's easier to think about.
Okay, wait a
You
minute.
have a nice dummy.
It is a nice dummy.
You lose 2 diamonds and at least 1 club.
I agree. Does everybody see that? You can kind of, cross over and say, okay,
Key
well,
is not
Queen
to
Jack
lose
cover
2
this,
clubs.
and you got nothing there. Right. So, the best way to look at this, normally you would look at the north hand and count your losers. So you can see that you're losing these 2, the club ace, and you got all these spades you got to worry about, right? The trouble, though, is that by conventional wisdom, roughing the long hand isn't a great way to solve your problem, right? Because you're just roughing with trumps that would be good anyway. So I want to show you that sometimes it's actually right to do this. You just have to do it enough times. So, and the key here is that if South, the long hand, roughs, he wants to make sure that at some point he has less trumps than North. Because then it's kind of like you're getting a
gotta
bonus
roll 3
trick,
times.
right? Because all those little hearts would have been good, but, this guy, and then you can draw trumps later, you get an extra trick. So to illustrate, we're going to win the ace of spades, right? No point in ducking. And we're going to rough a spade.
Okay?
Now what I can do is cross the ace of diamonds and do the same thing again, rough a spade.
Okay.
And now you might feel stuck because how do I get over the north to lead another spade, right?
Mhm.
Because if you lead a club, the defense can win and shift a trump. But that's okay.
Or you could have let it trump over there.
Right, which is the right thing to do, because this is an unnecessary risk. They could have let a bunch of diamonds and maybe gotten you that way, but
Because you're only pulling one of your trumps and getting back on the side.
right, exactly. So instead of being silly and take that risk, go ahead and just do this and rough your last spade. Okay.
Yep.
So now your spades are taken care of. You have enough trumps to deal with, the offensive winners, but there's still one very small problem here.
Yeah.
Can you see what that is?
Yep. Take it in with the ace of clubs and catch a couple times.
Right, so the trouble is if now you decide to go ahead and lead trumps, which for some reason here won't matter because the diamonds block. If you draw all the trumps, what happens is that the ace of clubs is still out and you don't know the distribution of the diamonds. You could potentially lose an extra diamond here. So,
Gotta leave a trump.
and so what I suggest doing, having seen this, instead of leading a trump, is leading that club early.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? This is where bridge gets kind of complicated because we need to think about when do we want to lose our tricks and who do we want to lose them to. And so if you kind of think about, okay, I'm going to rough out these spades, and then I have to like,
Where's the king of clubs?
It's in the north end.
yeah, North's playing the king of clubs.
Oh, you've got it, okay.
Yeah.
So if East wins it, East can't do anything to hurt you, right? You know, East's best move is to try leading a trump and see if it does anything, but, you know, there's nothing he can do. If he cashes his diamonds, here they block, you know, and South's trumps are so good that trump elopement here isn't possible for the defense, but that might be something to consider as well. And now if East ducks, you know, declarer should be a little bit scared, right? Because now there's a possibility that West could get a club ruff. And there's also this issue with the 9 of spades, you know, still being a loser. Today we're not going to really worry about what you should be thinking here because this is more for the advanced class. But does this idea make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, because this gives you an extra shot, and this is a lot better than going back to the very beginning and saying, well, you know, just drawing trumps
So
and
this
doing nothing,
thing-
because then you got all those spade losers you can't do anything with.
This is an example where you do rough with
The long end.
the long hand,
Right.
which you usually don't want to do.
Right,
You want to
exactly.
rough with the short hand, if you can.
Right. Notice in this example that North's trumps are strong,
Yeah.
which allows us to draw trumps later, and North also doesn't have any shortness, so the roughing and dummy isn't available to us.
Right.
Notice also that our only other option for, like, you know, make an extra trick is the club suit, and clubs are more likely to split 4-2 than they are 3-3. And so that's kind of why this is, you know, a risk, because if we just go about our merry way and, you know, draw trumps and stuff, then what's going to happen is that if clubs split 4-2, you're always going to go down.
Depends on who you're playing against, too.
Yeah, that's fair. Sometimes it depends who you're playing against. Sometimes they pitch a club from 4. I don't know why they do that. But so doing this dummy reversal, so to speak, allows you the opportunity
Oh.
to still make 10 tricks.
I never knew what that term meant. Double
That's all it
reversals?
is.
Okay.
It's
when
kind of like you're reversing rolls of the
Your
hands,
hand
Okay.
is the dummy.
right? Dummy's drawing trumps and you're doing that. That's,
Particularly since dummy's the much stronger hand.
Yeah.
yeah. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
It's not something you see every day, but it's worth mentioning because I've had it happen
You learned
once.
something, Roger.
Yeah, dummy reversal.
How about that?
And notice also in that example that you could kind of arrive at this conclusion just by doing the basics. So count your winners, count your losers. Think about, well, okay, what can I do to get rid of these losers? You can't rough and dummy, obviously, so there's only one thing left to do, right? That's how you arrive at that. So on to the next hand.
Onward and upward.
So we've been able to roughen dummy, we've been able to roughen the long hand. Why not roughen both hands, right? So here we're going to be looking at the cross rough. I want you guys to go ahead and try playing this yourselves because
Okay. What's the contract?
you were in 4 hearts as south.
You haven't made one of these my favorite contracts.
West has been bid spades and east is open diamonds.
That's right. But I can see why we're in hearts.
And you have a pretty dummy.
Yes, we do. Oh, man,
Well, it started out pretty.
it's still pretty. So we're in
Contract
4.
4 hearts?
Yes, you're in 4 hearts.
Ooh.
And
Double.
just to help the defense here, you should lead the jack of spades because I said so.
Okay. Who doubled?
West doubled.
I doubled.
All right, lead the jack.
Because Wes was like, I have a 10 count,
I
and
know.
partner opens, so it makes sense.
All right, you lead the jack. Whoever has the jack spade.
Okay, hang on.
Because I'm playing it.
You
Yeah.
know,
All right, play the ace.
Now, have you made your plan?
Yes,
Good.
okay. Now, what does this lead mean, partner?
means you have the 10.
So we won the ace of spades.
Nothing higher than that.
Top, no, could be the top of an interior
He could
sequence.
have king jack,
Could have,
king jack 10. Okay?
Base.
Okay.
Okay, now on board, play the diamond, please. How small?
So you did the right thing of leading a diamond first,
What was
roughing a
your
diamond.
Thank you.
You're on the
Please
board.
stay, please.
And now roughing a spade. And so the Claire's just going to keep doing this ad infinitum until
This is my favorite,
something
this is
happens.
my favorite way to play. 4, 7.
And so if West decides to rough here, North's simply going to over rough. And it's not really productive for the defense to rough here because, A, you can't establish a hard honor for partner, right? You know, so your best hope is just to see if the Claire messes up and you get your Queen of Hearts later. The defense is helpless here.
The main difference, what I discard on this.
You're
particular-
screwed.
Yeah.
Play small heart.
And so with 7 tricks in the bag, you know, now you can do something like exit a club. You don't want to draw trumps because you don't know where the Queen of Hearts is, and if they split 3-0, you could be in a bit of trouble.
Okay, let's play a club.
And now the defense might, you know, try cashing their winners, you know, cash 2 clubs and a diamond. But the diamond gets roughed.
Yeah,
Now if East led a spade, the same thing happens.
club.
And if East leads a trump,
Doesn't
then
matter which one.
you get your Queen of Hearts then. And it's all pretty straightforward. Let's see here. Does that idea make sense? The key
Oh,
in
you
this,
did. I didn't rough high enough. Okay, my bad. Play a
You have to play a club.
club.
right, so that's the other danger in this
Yeah, my
line.
bad.
If I can fast forward to it here.
I'm
Because
gonna leave.
Roger just over trumped you.
I know. It's okay.
So,
Let's spades. Play low, please. And we'll play that.
so a keen defender sitting in the West position here might decide to try pitching a suit and eventually getting a rough later, right? So, suppose that West has, you know, sight of the 4th dimension, and instead of pitching spades like I have in the example here, which why will you not let me? Let's say he pitches clubs.
I did.
Okay. So, use spade, roughed, diamond, roughed. And now we do the same thing. So,
Now,
East wins,
play a
cashes a club, and leads another club. So, if West hasn't already shown out, the Claire should be very suspicious. Because this is normal defense, is, you know, since you can't just rough whatever Declare is roughing, try pitching a side suit and then go ahead and rough. So at this point, now Declare should rough with the Ace of Hearts, leaving West helpless, and lead another diamond. And West is in the same kind of fork, if you will, that he was in earlier. If you rough low, Declare over roughs. East has to follow
lost
suit.
how many?
I lost
1, 2,
3.
Lost 2, 3.
Something, this should not be on the board because I only
I
have
only
two cards
have 2
left.
tricks.
2 cards
Oh,
left in my
I've
hand.
only got 2 left.
And the board's got 3, so what do we
Oh,
have to play?
we forgot to pick one up.
North's probably in lead and
Yeah,
leading a
probably
diamond,
spade,
right?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave the diamond.
Yeah, that's the right thing to do. And you can see, you know, you're powerless. So the other trap that some people fall into, and you did the right thing, but I want to point it out. Notice that north-south, there are 2 suits you want to rough, diamonds and spades. It's almost always right to start with the longer suit unless you need to be in one hand for a particular reason. That maximizes the number of roughs you get. Another way to think about this is that you're sort of creating entries by making those roughs, but I always just like to think that I'm getting more tricks because
There's
it's
no
what I'm
reason for
doing.
those entries.
Yeah, I mean they're the same thing, so
Yeah.
why overcomplicate it? So That's why you start with the diamonds first.
Oh, okay.
And notice that because you did that, what happens is you can lead this diamond later.
And finesse the heart.
Right, exactly. Does that make sense?
Yep. Does.
Now, if he somehow got in the lead and switched to trump, declarer would feel kind of stuck. I
Well,
believe
no,
you.
because I think that at that point.
I mean, on
I
the
have a
on
good
this
diamond,
hand,
I have a good diamond.
right, on this hand, the finesse is on side, and you're not worried about it, and you're still able to get the dummy through a club rough and rough a diamond. But in other layouts, it might be something the declarer is worried about is a trump switch from the wrong side. Those are the times where you have to kind of think about which hand do I want to start roughing in first, and you know. Again, that's more for the advanced class. As long as you get that's what you're supposed to do, I'm
When
happy.
is that class going to be?
That'll be next week, the same
Next
Sunday. Yeah. So, any questions about that?
Yep.
Okay. So, next hand should be this guy, I think. Yeah, because
7, we just put, I put 6 on top. But
yeah, try this one. This should be it.
Just leave it that way. Okay, now, this it says south. Yeah, just get rid of that. That works. Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so the lead,
I think she has a distributional hand.
What's the
partner.
contract?
South is in 4 hearts and gets the ace of club lead. I'll be right back, but go ahead and look at the hand. West is overcalled spades. If you're sitting south, if you're sitting south, think about what tricks you're going to lose and what tricks you might promote in the winner.
And so I'm playing the hearts and stuff.
Yeah, I will. Not a club.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Contract focus.
Do you want to play this, Jack?
Yeah, go ahead and try to play it yourself and
We
see.
need an East player.
Let's say east. So, ace of clubs.
King of clubs.
King of clubs, play the 3.
Let's do the king of clubs.
No, the 3
No,
of clubs.
club.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
sorry.
would like to.
Follow suit.
Okay,
Okay, is that 2 or 4?
that's 2.
play the
That's
2.
not where I'm at. How many do you have in your hand?
I have
One
4.
piece of trick.
Okay, I wasn't sure whether that was 2
Yeah,
or
he's a
4.
trick.
Yours.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
he's not.
Got another club, Jack?
All right. You pitch a diamond?
Mhm.
Okay, good. That was the right thing to do. And so at this point, if we look at the declarer's hand, it doesn't really matter what happens as long as the trumps come in, right?
Yep.
So my question to you is, what do you think the right way to play trumps is?
I'm in my hand.
Play the ace.
Actually, you're in
I think
dummy because you won a ton of clubs.
Play the 2 of spades and then trumps and spades.
It wouldn't be a bad idea, but here you don't really need to do that, right? Because it just depends on how the hearts come in. Let's say that you're able to draw trumps without losing the queen. You can afford one loser still. And since those spades are all big sequence, you're just losing the king of spades. Right? In this situation, what you would do is, lead a low heart to the ace, or the king. Cross the dummy to the ace of diamonds. And then he would lead the jack of hearts and see if East plays low. Here East plays the queen, so there's no guess. But normally you would play for the drop unless you have reason to think otherwise, right?
You
So-
have the 10, there's no reason not to.
Right, so I'm going to back this up because the defense needs to do better, right? Because we promoted the 10 of clubs for you to make your life a lot easier.
It did help.
Okay, so go ahead. I want to show you here on the screen. I'm going to go back to my...
Yeah, I know.
So,
I probably should have led, instead of the second club, I should have led a heart.
so in this situation, I recommend switching a diamond.
I said or a diamond.
Yeah.
So you took 2 club tricks.
Yeah, but I shouldn't have.
Right.
I should have only taken one.
And so, in this position, the cleric kind of has to think a little bit harder, right? Because we still have a club loser, we still have a possible heart loser, and we may even lose a diamond, because now we have to commit to whether the diamond finesse is onside or offside, right? So, there's a lot of things going on here. So, the key observation is noticing your spade suit, right? You potentially have a no-loser suit if you take a roughing finesse, which I'm going to explain in a second. And that's probably going to work because West has shown spades. So another way to think about this is as long as trumps come in, you can afford to take the diamond finesse, and if it loses, go about your merry way.
So when I get in my hand with ace of spades, then leave the queen, and if she doesn't play the king, then I do not.
Exactly. So after finessing a diamond, which today it holds, you're going to immediately lead the spade of the ace and lead the queen of spades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say West covers, because that's easy.
Well, West would have opened 5 spades with 9 high. Overcall.
Yeah, it would
I
be.
had
They
an
don't have a
opening
king.
hand.
Right.
I could have.
That's support for the reason why this works.
Yeah.
Because if West is overcalled, he's likely to have.
Overcalled, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, since I have all the rest of the spades.
Any
Yeah.
advantage
That
to
was
leading
just
the
the
queen of
9.
spades as opposed to the
Not at the
10?
king, no.
And I know, but I.
Not
But I have an
particularly.
opening
I
hand.
mean,
No, I have an opening hand.
it's not like you're going to induce West to cover more one way or the other,
You don't
right?
think so?
If you lead the queen, West would actually be a little more likely to cover because sometimes people don't have the jack and 10 behind and they'll get an extra trick. But for the example, it won't really matter.
Okay.
So suppose West covers, it's easy, you just rough, and now, you can see your way home provided you get the trumps
Sure,
right.
I'm gonna cover too. I don't know that you don't have the 10.
All right, so suppose West ducks. Now instead of roughing, what you're going to do is you're going to pitch a loser. Let's say you pitch a club, because I said so. Now the queen of spades holds. You can do the same thing again, right? And West is in the same bind as before. If West covers, you rough, and if West plays low, you're going to pitch another loser.
Any smart way for West to play this as to which spade trick
I'm gonna
covers?
cover.
That's a good question. So normally it just depends on the count of the hand. So like in this situation, it doesn't matter what West really does here because as soon as the first spade holds, everybody knows where the king of spades is. It's just a question of whether East can rough or not, right? So
Yeah.
let's say West knew that East had a doubleton spade, which he doesn't here.
I might wait till the 3rd round of spades to play the king.
Right. So now West will probably duck twice and see that South pitches and East roughs. Right? But that's really more, again, it's more for the advanced class, but that's something that you might think about when you're doing this line is how do the spades split? Because
But
clearly,
then I'll lose a club. I'll lose a club trick if I don't cover.
right. Will we lose a club trick?
I might lose a club trick, sure.
Here,
Might lose my king.
that would be true if North had one less club. Because you see here, I'm only ever going to establish 2 winners,
Oh, okay.
right? Because
Well, he has one.
as long as West doesn't duck all 3 spades, it's true. But West isn't going to duck all 3 spades,
No,
right? Because South can't have 5 spades for the opening.
no,
So,
no, because he would open a spade.
right. But so this line of play works on this deal provided that you get the trumps right, and you normally will here because you have the ace of diamonds as an entry to take advantage of basically every combination except for West's queen 3rd, which you were going to lose anyway. So does that idea kind of make sense?
Yeah,
Mhm.
does.
I put that with the roughing stuff just because even though it's a finesse, you require having trumps and dummy to, over rough West king of spades, and then you have to be able to come back to your hand and cash those winners. So on to the next hand.
Number 8.
Yes, yes,
I'm
yes.
looking for that hand that we were talking about.
From Friday.
Yeah, no.
Oh, the hand that
That he
that
sent
he
us,
sent an email.
yeah.
Let's see.
I didn't open the email, so I didn't.
You didn't open the email?
I've been busy.
Okay, I've been busy
Board
too.
number 1 or board number 8?
Number 8.
It should be 8. Yeah, the numbering on this is not the first deal. I decided
Okay,
to
the
omit
number.
because who cares about the simple finesse. But now we're going to talk about plays where you need to think about unblocking. So what that means, the old adage is the high card from the short side. And what that means is that if you're trying to run a suit, like the north-south spades here, it pays to play the spades from the shorthand first and then come over to the long hand and run those spades. Otherwise, you risk not being able to get over to the south hand and cash those
What's the
tricks.
contract?
You're in the 4-note trump. And again, not by your own fault, okay? So,
Who's leading?
Well, it looks like that,
this is...
this is,
Ooh, I deleted the wrong one.
yeah.
Oh, that's
I
a
was going
shame.
to say, because
Alright, so North's declaring this one
North
because I
declaring
deleted
this
the
one,
wrong
yeah.
version of this.
Okay.
So,
So I'm not on, well, am I on, no, yes.
yes,
I'm
because
on
I
the-
opened 2 no trump.
Okay.
I want to rotate this for convenience.
No, you're not.
Well, don't worry, you can still look at the same hands. The
No, you're not.
position of the cards is still the same.
I'll lead the king of clubs.
Okay, I agree.
So North's playing this hand.
I blame this hand. I was trying to get you on this, in the hot seat.
So, you get a club lead, okay? And you win with the ace and dummy.
How did they end up in 4 no trump?
Don't ask.
Okay,
It's
all right.
It's
never
screwed
mind.
up.
I'm not condoning the north-south bidding necessarily,
Okay.
right? It's
He's
Where do
making
you
us
find
play
It's
these
a hand.
arguable.
He's making us play a hard hand.
Where do you find these hands?
I make most of them. I think I only borrowed 2 this
And North's
set.
got a void in clubs?
Well, he will.
He does
once
now.
plays the
Wait a
ace.
minute, I don't,
Was
hey,
he-
Sal, I don't have that south hand.
That's all right. I just flipped it.
Oh,
Yeah,
all right,
but it won't matter.
okay.
You get a club lead, okay, which you have to win with the ace and dummy, so you might as well, okay. And don't worry about East because his hand won't matter for this.
Okay.
So my question to you is, how do you take 10 tricks?
Okay,
Have to have a diamond finesse.
well, nice to get a 4th round of diamonds, if you could.
Not necessarily, right? You may or may not need the diamond finesse.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5th round of spades.
Or hearts?
Well, you're only gonna get 3 rounds of hearts.
So
Well, you don't know what's in her hand. How many hearts is
3.
she? 3.
So the first question is, how many winners does South have?
Now has
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6
4.
and a half.
Well, I'm counting
Well,
5.
I've already gotten 1.
I'm counting 5.
Oh.
I'm counting the queen of diamonds.
Okay, so this is a hard hand to count winners with. So counting winners blindly, in addition to the ace of clubs, you might say, well, okay, I have 4 definite spades, 3 hearts, and the ace of diamonds, right? So which is 4, 7, 8, 9 tricks.
Where's the ace of spades you have?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that would be the ace, king, queen, jack of spades, the 3 hearts, and the ace of diamonds, and the ace of clubs over here. So you might say, okay, well, I can get an extra trick from a long spade or the diamond finesse, right? So there are 2 problems, and the first one is the most obvious.
The spades
As soon
are
as you
kinda
lose,
blocked.
as soon as you lose the lead, you're going to go down, right? Because whoever you lose it to, they're going to cash a bunch of clubs, and it's going to be the end of you. So the other problem is a little more subtle. Can anybody tell me what it is?
The spades are not guaranteed, they're blocked.
Right, that's the best observation. Let's say that North plays blindly here and cashes the ace jack of spades. High card from the short side, right?
You can over.
Right, that's what you're supposed to do. But if you didn't, this would be the situation. And
Yeah.
beginners run into this all the
Never gonna
time.
get there.
It won't overtake.
You have all these good tricks in the North hand, but there's no entry, there's no way for North to win another lead to get up to those spades. If South had another small spade, you're fine, but he doesn't. So you end up having to lead away from your hand and lose a bunch of tricks. So, like you said, you actually have to overtake the spade. Even though the jack of spades would win the trick, you're winning it in the wrong hand.
Yeah, okay.
And now you have to hope that either the 10 falls or you get a 3-3 split.
You hope they split, yeah.
And here they split 3-3 and all is well. If they split 4-2, you're kind of stuck, right? Because if you go back to the beginning, you would have 1, 2, 3, 4 spades, 3 hearts, the ace of diamonds, and now you need to come up with 2 tricks out of somewhere. And the only way to do that would be if East had precisely the king, jack of diamonds, like Doubleton.
Yeah.
So the line of
They
play.
don't take all their club tricks before you ever find that out anyway.
Well, that's just it, right? So, this is the best line, is to hope that the spades break the way they do. Because otherwise you can't touch the spades and you go down no matter what. So does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep.
One thing I always like to point out when I teach this is that this is a really easy problem if we switch the spade, right? Because now you would just play ace of spades, high card from the short side, and low over. People get stuck when they have a winner because it's like, oh, well, I have to let this be good. Not necessarily. A winner is terrible if you're winning in the wrong hand. That's the moral of this deal. So
Okay.
now for the fun stuff.
All those tricks left over there.
How do you think I felt? I had 6 in my hand.
This next hand will be a fun one.
Here.
You want the fun one. Phyllis?
Okay, I'll take it.
You'll take it.
I'll take it.
So again, through no fault of his own, South declares 7-no trump after a very strange auction with a lot of unusual hands, and West leads the queen of diamonds because I said so.
Why are they not in spades?
Like I said, not your fault. Not your fault.
Okay.
So since you're in 7-no trump and you got the queen of diamonds lead, you need to figure out how to make this.
You
Alright,
have
let
no
me
diamonds,
look
you
at this.
dummy.
You got
You want me to put that
Nice
down more on the
spades.
table?
nice hearts.
No clubs.
You got the club stop twice.
Yeah. What have we got?
1,
We've
2,
done
3,
as far
4,
as
5,
spades.
6, 7,
Got
8,
2 spades.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I can count 15 tricks.
6.
Yeah, so there are a lot of
Get
tricks
there.
here, right?
6.
Problem
However,
is, I
you
can't
gotta
get to my
to 'em.
hand.
Right, and that's a good observation. So when I see
Really can't get to my hand.
And so what's interesting here though, what most people would do instinctively, and I don't think it's too terribly wrong, but it's wrong enough that we're teaching this, is they would just try to run their clubs, right? Because they can count 13 tricks.
They can.
And so the trouble though is that if clubs split 3-0, they immediately go down.
Ooh, I wouldn't run clubs when I can run spades and hearts.
Right, so but that's the trouble though. So
I know what I would do.
a slightly better player would say, okay, well, I can run spades and hearts. So they would try to do this, and what would happen is they would, try to unblock from the
Wait a
short
minute, I have a
side.
singleton- Oh, no, I don't have a singleton.
They can't ever get to the south hand.
No, I would
Right,
lead a low
precisely.
diamond, just lose it. I mean, a low club and
They
lose
really
a
can't get
club.
Well, here, tell me that line again.
I'm in 7.
Yeah, you're in 7. If
But
you
I'm
were in
in
6,
7?
yeah, you're in 7. Like I said, no fault of your own.
I can make 6.
Okay.
Yeah, you can absolutely make 6. But you can make 7 too.
How you gonna get
All right, let me think.
to the- Yeah.
So we do realize the problem on this hand, right?
Oh, yes.
The trouble is you have a lot of winners, but you have no way to access them.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, what is causing that problem?
The high cards in my hand, or one of the hands.
So if you could get rid of those high cards
Yes.
while staying in the south hand on lead, you wouldn't have this problem. Does that make sense?
So I'm on lead with the diamond.
So with that helpful hint, what do you think south should do?
South should play either a spade or a heart. Probably a spade. And play the king and the
How are you
ace.
gonna get rid of the second spade on the north hand though?
Right, so we agree we need to get rid of these at some point,
Yeah.
right? So since we have 2 winners, let's just discard.
Oh, I'm sorry, we got 2.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
just discard both of them.
Yeah.
But how many, on the diamond. Okay.
Yeah.
Now
yeah.
notice
I
that
missed
this
the second
works.
Yeah.
This only works because South has enough winners after unblocking that, you're effectively getting rid of all your club losers. So after unblocking the spades,
Then I get.
right, don't get careless, because if you just pinch a bunch of clubs, you're going to go down again, right? You're going to do something like this.
So I play the ace, king of diamonds. And
slough the spades.
And see,
And
if
raise
you
your
pitch
hand.
your clubs carelessly, you're just going to end up in the same problem, just a bunch of
Okay.
tricks later.
So I play the diamonds, slough the spades.
Right. So,
And then I play 6 spades.
what do you pitch though from north?
Well, I'm gonna pitch a couple of clubs.
You'll have to, but you need to also pitch the hearts.
Yeah, both of them. Because the
But
queen, jack,
how do I
10
know?
are good.
Oh, I have queen jack, I had it wrong here.
Yes.
Yes, I'll pitch the hearts and the clubs. So I've got 6, that's 2.
And now you have enough winners in the
3,
south hand to
4,
cover north's
5, 6.
losers.
Yeah, I got it. Yep,
Assuming you can get the fourth round of hearts.
I get it.
7.
Yeah, you
I've
get
got
it.
queen jack 10 in my hand.
Right.
Yeah, 7 has to be good.
Actually, let's see, 3, 6, 9, and 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's not true. You only, as long as the spade's set up, you're fine. And they will, because you got all these good spots.
Yeah.
Which, take note, if you have intermediates, your hand's worth a little bit more in the bidding. So, does this idea make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you're pitching,
Pitching good tricks.
It's kind of like the last, you're pitching winners, but the trouble is if you win over there, it's just not good
You're
for you.
screwed.
So,
Right.
why do it, right? And again, if north spades were small, this would be very easy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, assuming south had winning spades.
It's
But
one of those hands you really screw yourself on the first
Yeah.
break.
this is sort of like the, Greek gift, right? You got all these winners, but no way to cash them. So that technique is called a jettison. Because you're just,
because
Getting rid of it.
you're pitching 4 drinks.
Pitching good ones.
yeah, but it's really just,
Not really.
it's really just a very flashy type of unblocking play. I have only ever had to do it once that I can remember. I wish I remembered
Let's
the
go back to
hand.
the beginning of that.
Yeah, go put.
All right, you let a diamond,
Let's see.
and I play a spade from dummy and play the king
Oh,
of
that's right.
diamonds.
'Cause white
And I play
diamonds
the
are
ace of
void.
diamonds, and
Right,
I slot the spade.
right. That's what's key
And
here.
then I have
Yeah.
6 spade tricks.
Right.
Right. Notice on this hand, if West leads anything but a diamond, the contract sets. Because without a diamond lead, South can never get into his hand to
Yeah.
unblock those honors.
But
So
that's the natural lead.
that's just it. It does look like the natural lead, but how do you know? Different discussion for a different day.
Well, it
Okay.
could be, a club lead could be a natural lead too.
If I were West, we were playing the lead the deuce of spades.
You're so full of beans.
Okay, so on to the next
Remember
hand.
our Cadoro leagues,
Yes.
always unconventional against them. Keep him from taking the trick with a suit.
Right.
There.
Okay, now these go somewhere.
Yeah,
Probably.
anywhere.
Oh,
I gotta get
Well,
some
he's-
crackers. I don't know why I'm hungry.
Okay.
Anybody?
why
No,
don't you
no.
bring the box of crackers?
You want, I'll bring the jar.
Or jar.
Yeah.
So this one will probably be pretty straightforward for you guys here, because we've seen it before. But it's something that you need to keep in the back of your mind, regardless. It never hurts to hear the same thing twice. So, and of course, I've
At 27 points. All
I've deleted the wrong copy again.
right. Okay, that's why I made it.
Okay, so now for convenience, South is declaring 3-note trump. You'll have to forgive me. I did another boo-boo. The hands are switched on the screen, but they're in the same
Okay.
order on the hand. And so South is declaring 3-note trump.
Let me see you done it right.
Hang on.
You can
I'm not
share.
organized.
You're south, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what, the contract is 3-note trump?
Mm-hmm. Contract's 3-note trump.
And I got 8 sure winners, and I gotta find another one.
Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah,
Well,
you got 5 diamonds, 2 hearts,
I'm east. You're south.
the ace of spades, and the ace of clubs. I'm counting 9 tricks. Right? Because if
Right.
diamond split 4, you can
Yeah.
always take them. So here the contract always makes, right? So in match points, this is a situation where you'd be worried about over tricks, right? Because you know the contract is cold. And it's just a question of how to go about doing that. You wouldn't really worry about this too much in, say, team events or rubber play. But sometimes you can do it without any cost to you, and it's worth thinking about. So when they lead a spade, you have to duck one.
Actually, I'm looking, that's smart to lead a spade, but I'm also looking at the clubs.
Right, in the auction, you know to lead a spade because partner made a lead directing double. That's kind of the hint.
Okay.
Whether you should lead a club absent that double is, I think it's still probably the right thing to do. Because Wes doesn't really have the club suit he wants to establish, let alone an entry to get back. And the reason you're ducking a spade is because you can see the problem here is declarer, where the spades might be 5-3, right? And the trouble is, even though you have 9 tricks, if you want to make an over trick, there's some risk involved with losing the trick to somebody, because whoever wins it might be able to lead spades, and then you go down when the spades are split poorly. So since we're thinking about how to make an over trick kind of safely, what is something that north-south can do to prevent east-west from running their spades?
From the get-go,
Yeah.
where are they now?
West has led the 7 of spades, and now
And
declare
they've
has to...
ducked it.
Right, so we need to duck this a couple of times. Okay? East leads another spade. And we duck again.
All right.
And then they try to lead a third spade. Notice that West, who had 3 spades, is now exhausted of that suit. So
Yeah.
if...
Safe thing.
Yes, that's exactly right. West is now the safe hand. So if we do lose a trick, we'd rather lose it to West, because we're looking at all 3 aces. East isn't going to have a definite entry. So if we have to take a finesse, we want to finesse through East, because if West wins, we're still setting up our trick, right? And no risk of going down. So
But you still, you won't go down, but you will hold you to 3 because I'll duck the club and let my partner take it with the queen or king, whatever he has.
well, you're not going to work on the clubs first. You're going to work on the hearts first.
Yeah,
But
it's 5 hearts.
right. So the one thing I want to point out, if you ever get stuck as to how many times you should duck, there's this rule called the rule of 8. And so I have 5 cards in their suit, and 8 minus 5 is 3.
Duck 3 times.
And so you duck 3 times. The way to think about this without remembering the rule is just, well, what are the different splits of spades, right? And if they split 4-4, you can't do anything. If they split 5-3, that's the maximum number of times you're going to have to duck to exhaust one person. So you would duck 3 times. This is almost always the right thing to do, is to duck a bunch of times. The only time you wouldn't is if you were afraid of them switching to a different suit, right? Here, you're not too worried about it, because if they lead a club, they're helping you.
Right.
That club suit is a frozen suit. So you duck 3 times, and now you're in this position, right? So what do you do next?
I catch the diamonds.
I think it's a good idea. It doesn't appear to be any risk in
Do
this,
the heart finesse.
and you might learn something about East distribution, because we know East has 5 spades. We're kind of, assuming that because our thing worked. Now East has to pitch something. Let's say he pitches a club, okay? We know that East started with 1 diamond and at least 4 spades and probably 5.
Counts for 6, so he's got,
Notice that East here is, unless he's pretty decent in thinking ahead of time, East is going to kind of struggle with his discards here. If East pitches 3 hearts carelessly, you know which way to take the heart finesse, almost certainly, right?
Yeah.
So you pitch a bunch of clubs.
'Cause he-
Yeah, this would be ridiculous defense, because now East probably has 5 spades, 1 diamond, and then start with 3 hearts and 4 clubs. East could hardly have 5 hearts here. In addition to 5 spades, he might have made like a double or an overcall or something with that kind of shape. So then instead of finessing into the safe hand, you might think about, okay, well, I can do this. But let's say that East isn't so careless. Let's say he pitches a club and another club.
He was telling you the same thing. about
Yeah,
clubs.
so East knows that he's never going to get back in, and so he might decide to pitch his
I was just
spades.
gonna say,
Yeah.
it's pitch a spade.
Mm-hmm.
he's never gonna take the trick.
Right.
So don't give any information, it's the best you can do.
Right, exactly. So notice that in this position, if the defenders are counting, this is about what it should come down to. Because each opponent is holding 3 hearts and providing declare with maximum uncertainty about where the heart queen is, right?
Or where the club keep, well, yeah.
Yeah, so, and this is why defending isn't easy, because you got to count. But now, with declare being a little less clear about where the heart is, who's he going to finesse for? Or who's he going to finesse against?
It's gonna finesse against the spade holder.
Right, so we're going to finesse against, well here, actually, it won't particularly matter because
Right,
East
pitch
pitched
the
all his
spades.
spades.
Yeah.
You're never gonna cash that space because he pitched him.
So now it's kind of, you can afford to finesse wrong. You can think about who has what.
Doesn't matter.
It would be pretty equal here. So let's do this the right way. Let's say that East pitches all of his clubs, keeping his spades and the threat. And notice that you can't like keep all of your clubs here as a threat because this heart is going to be a definite winner if you finesse it over in the safe hand as we're going to show. Did I lost the wrong hand, didn't I? There we go. No. Come on now. Did I? Yeah. I knew I did something else wrong. Right? Yeah, there it is. There's the mistake. So, in this position here,
Now, spades are dangerous, so you have to finesse
yes, exactly.
East.
Right. And notice that you can't necessarily make the inference that, okay, well, East is pitching all his clubs to confuse me, and so West must have it. That's false, because East would do this with Queen Third of Hearts as well. He'd be the only person guarding hearts, so he would have to, by force, pitch his clubs and see what happens. If East pitches his spades like we saw, this is really easy for declare. He can just kind of take his best guess. So what you would do is you would finesse
Yeah.
to West. And notice that West isn't going to have any other suit like diamonds to return here because we cashed all those. We had those winners. So now West is helpless. If spades started 4-4, yeah, you'll lose a spade, but that's fine. You still have control of the hand. Here, exit the club, and your hearts are good, right?
So the key is you gotta watch and see if East discards good spades.
Yeah, so that one was just a lesson in being able to lose the lead to the right person if it was necessary. And the reason you had to is because those other losers you could have lost were pretty fast. You don't have control of the hand. So this next one then is going to follow similar lines. Let's see.
Who did?
Yeah, so South is declaring 3 no trump,
How many? Three. Okay.
and you're getting the Jack of Spade lead.
Jack of spades?
Jack of Spades. So again, we're going to use the same thought process. We're going to count our winners, count losers 2, 1. Let's think about how to make this hand.
Thank you, partner.
Looking at the wrong hand, okay. Can you
So
slightly-
this hand leads Jack spades.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From Jack 10, fourth, would you lead the Jack or would you lead a small one?
Here's West is Jack 10-9, so he's going to lead the Jack. If you had Jack 10-4,
That's Jack 10-8.
No, he's
This is not.
in West Hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in
Yeah,
the
you're
wrong
good.
hand.
It just kind of
The Jack's
depends on what you
already
need a
out.
partner to have. So if you lead low, you're fine because the partner has the 9, all is well. If you need to push through North's honor, then leading the Jack is better because now you get to stay on lead if it gets stuck to you. If you lead low, you might then play partner.
Okay, so it's better, from 2, you lead the Jack, you would lead the Jack then.
I would lead the Jack sometimes and lead low other times. It just depends on what I need to do. you know.
Depends on the bidding.
I happen to prefer leading the Jack, but I don't know if it's technically the correct thing.
God, I have to
It's
do
just
it.
I just found that it's worked.
Because Ron
It's only two.
told us when we took lessons from him that unless you have a series.
Yeah, and it does work. It just depends on what your goals are. So
Anyway, okay,
here we can see how many definite tricks are there.
South is playing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So definite, you've got
1,
2, 3, 5.
5, 6,
Maybe that's-
7, 8. Develop one.
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah,
we have
you got
2
the
spades, a heart, 3 diamonds, and 2 clubs.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right.
okay.
You can look at the
I
north
guess
hand when you
we'll
count
find
tricks.
Yeah, you want the
It's all
diamonds,
yours,
but you can't
baby.
get to them.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm
so
gonna
the
do.
question here is how do you set up a 9th trick? Right?
Can I do it?
Sure you can, Roger.
You can. There's only 2 suits you're really going to be thinking about setting up a trick in, right? And one of them you probably dismiss pretty quickly.
Close.
You can't get to dummy, right?
Yes, I can.
How do you get to dummy?
So the obvious suit to look at here is diamonds because we're looking at 6 of them opposite 2. And if they're 3-2, we can cash all 3 of them. They're going to run, and that's great. The other suit you might have thought about was spades because if they were 3-3, you could establish a 13th spade. But West is leading spades. Those leads tend to be from 4-card suits. It wouldn't be my first
Yeah.
instinct, right? If nothing else, if you tested diamonds and you were wrong, you could always back up to the spades later, right?
What if you lost a diamond right away?
Yes.
That's what we're going to get
That's
to.
what I'm
So
gonna do.
you want to test diamonds
No,
first.
Just waited for me to say it
Yeah. I'm gonna lead the deuce of diamonds.
and let it ride.
So the question is, when you do this, what happens if diamonds split poorly?
What, you leave the low diamond?
You only get 3 diamonds.
Right, so if you decided to foolishly cash the ace, king, queen of diamonds, which would work like, 68% of the time or whatever it is, but today it would fail.
Mhm.
What's this called when you purposely lose the trick to maintain your communication?
Losing the trick.
I just call it a ducking play.
Okay. Losing trick play, all right.
Yeah,
Got it.
losing trick play. I like that. Instead of losing trick count, this means losing. Anyhow, so now North has no entry to these diamonds, which could be established by doing this, but you can't get over there. So, you look kind of silly. So instead of looking silly, what you can do to
Oh,
protect
yeah,
against
okay.
this split,
Because sometimes I look silly.
you should duck a diamond.
Yeah.
Notice that you have a stopper in all the other suits, so
Yeah.
you
You
can
have
afford to
control.
lose a lead. You have control. Now this will guard against the 4-1 split, which they do split 4-1 here. And so even if the defenders try to do something like, attack hearts or spades, you can win. And as long as, here you can go about cashing your diamond winners now, because all diamonds fall, right?
Okay, what do you do if West led a heart?
That's a good question. So let's say, back up the first trick. Let's say West instead led a heart. Maybe his partner made some kind of weird overcall or something. So you would duck a couple times, right? You're not worried about a
Okay.
switch. And if West is leading from a 5-card suit, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Let's say you pitch a spade. So here, let's count our winners again. So how many winners do we have? We've won 1, right? The ace of hearts. We're still stuck to the same 8 winners we had earlier,
Right,
right?
right.
So the trouble here is if you're wrong about the heart distribution, you're going to lose, more tricks. So if you knew that hearts were split the way they were, you would do the same thing, but here you don't. Now you have to consider what's more likely than not. I would say in this situation, it's probably right to go ahead and just cash the time and stop down.
Really? You can't
Be-
afford
because
to
of
lose
the
a
fee-
diamond
be-
and a heart trick?
Well, on this layout you can, but
that'd be 4.
on this layout you can because you know that the hearts are split like this. But if East had a 5-card suit,
Yeah, then you lose 2 hearts.
right? So now,
That's the diamond.
depending on who you're playing against, you might make the inference, noticing that East has the King, Queen, Jack of Hearts. In this auction, if he had the suit, he might throw in 1 heart bid. That might sway you against playing this way, right? That's
But
really
you
all there
would
is
get
in
a
this
heart
hand.
lead, though.
Yeah.
Right.
You would get a heart lead.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, should you get a heart lead in this kind of hand, sometimes you have to think about, again, what's out there. Is it right to play safe? So, here, like I said, if East is showing all those hearts and hasn't overcalled, I might go ahead and take the safety play as long as I can guarantee that East is winning the trick, because, if East is on lead and doesn't have 5 hearts, then okay. It just depends on how I judge that. Notice that on this deal, you can't duck a diamond necessarily, because if West had 5 hearts, which is quite possible, you could have 5 small and not overcall. Now he can win. If West instead had, say, the 3, and I judged that East didn't have 5 hearts, now it would be correct to duck, because if East doesn't have 5 hearts, you can protect against the split again. So it gets kind of involved because, a lot of what ifs, but
That's bridge.
that's bridge, exactly.
You know what I think, bridge, is each hand is a puzzle,
It really is.
Oh, yeah.
For
you
sure.
know?
I think the best part is you can look at the same hand 20 times and get a different puzzle every time.
You know what I found, the doctor? Man, GP is a world-class chess player.
Really?
That's interesting.
Yeah. I always thought he was dumb like a fox.
Let's see.
That's
so
11.
Did I put the other 2 away? Let's go ahead and, because these 2 are. I'll say this one here is probably the most interesting in the set, aside from this.
There was a hand that you sent us.
And you couldn't find it, you looked it up.
No, I didn't look. Keep going. Anyway, I remember that this hand had H-Jack third of spades. And this hand had bit a spade. Don't remember the
This is
hand you
12.
sent us?
Was it the one that I sent a correction about?
I don't know.
That's the only one that I've sent semi-recently that I can remember.
It was with, let me see.
There's one hand I messed up because I had
No, it
various
wasn't a
versions.
correction. It was with your, telling us about the,
All right, Sal.
oh gosh.
Well, I can see how what I'm supposed to bid up there.
Yeah, right.
It's mine, huh? Is it
So
mine or?
7, 8,
Yeah.
9, 10, 14, 15 points. You open 1 spade.
Mhm.
Let's see, well, let's see, 10, 13. You counting West's hand?
6, 7, 8,
I've
9,
got-
10, 11, 12. I have to bid a no trump.
Everybody's got about the right values for
I've
their
got
actions.
lots.
North might be being a little aggressive, but, that's
I will
okay.
bid too. Are we vulnerable? No.
So South ends up in 6 spades.
I will
However you
bid
decide,
3 hearts over their spade.
and they still get the 6 spades.
Don't be a smart
So when West leads the King of Hearts, there we go. So
Use any hearts.
when West leads the King of Hearts, what should the declarer be thinking?
Where are the tricks?
Okay, that's a good question. But what tricks do we have for certain?
Well,
You
you got all
got
the
a potential diamond
spades.
loser and a sure club loser.
You've got a club loser and probably
So
done.
you can't lose the diamond finesse.
So you have to make sure that the finesse me for it.
Right. So
I'm-
here you can see that you have 7 spade tricks. The Ace of Hearts and the Ace of Diamonds is 9 tricks. You need 3 more tricks somehow. The trouble is that your diamond suit is very and so if you go about leading this yourself, you may lose 2 diamond tricks.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the king is on side. So, for example, let's say that, what do I want to do here? What do I want to do?
What does it give me?
Oh, this will show you so if North cashes the Ace of Hearts, he goes down with proper defense. And so if it went something like this, now you might pitch, I don't know, let's say you pitched a diamond, right? It won't really matter. You draw trumps, ending in dummy.
Okay.
And let's say you decide to tackle clubs, okay?
Yeah.
You're still going down. Now, if I'm not mistaken, South takes this, right, and exits a heart.
Come on, you fool. Now you.
And because clubs don't split, you get one pitch on the diamond, but the diamond finesse is offside, and you know, all is poor. So,
So you're going down.
right.
Okay, why did this stop here? Damn
You know, and that'll be true anytime the diamond finesse is offside here because, you know, if the clubs don't split, you don't get that pitch that you need.
Yep.
So the trouble is, how do you make this hand if the diamond finesse is offside? Because you always have to lose the ace of clubs. There's no way around that.
Yeah.
it. You just have to hope for the diamond finish.
It's not a bad line, but there's actually a better one. It's a very interesting. It's a very interesting
Wait
line.
a minute, how many cards are over there?
Yeah, ace third
Where, in the west?
in the north.
Oh, look, I keep getting screwed up there.
Go ahead and you take the ace of hearts and play on the clubs and get rid of your diamonds.
So if you let's see, you said ace of hearts, get rid of clubs, right?
No. Discard a diamond on the
On the ace of
on the
hearts.
ace of hearts,
Okay.
That's
and
only
then play
one.
the 4 clubs to the jack.
Now West will win do the same thing. Let's say you rough, and now it's the same situation you were in earlier because you're only ever getting one pitch here if the clubs
Okay.
don't split.
Easy.
It's not a bad attempt, but it's the same problem. You have to,
You
if
need
clubs
two
split
pitches.
poorly and the diamond finesse is offside, you can't make it on this line.
So you have to lead clubs from your hand, from the south.
With your hand, you lead up to the king queen.
Yeah.
So maybe the best way to frame this question, perhaps, since you have to lose the ace of clubs,
It depends on what I do. It
Yeah.
depends on what West does.
since you have to lose the ace of clubs, is there a way that you can lose the ace of clubs that doesn't cost you a winner,
Yeah,
right?
Just lead up to the
lead
king.
up to it.
Right, and that's the key here. The other key is to not play the ace of hearts, and you'll see why here in a moment. So, let's say that you rough,
Ah,
okay, and you should be able to draw 2 trumps, yeah, safely
you
here.
keep the ace of hearts.
Mm-hmm. And now, you have to lead a low club. Notice that West has the ace of clubs here. He's open. That's what's probably going to be. West is stuck in a fork. West can do 2 bad things. He can win the ace of clubs,
Then what?
which is played on air. Now you have that second pitch for your diamonds, in addition to the ace of hearts.
You got 2 clubs and an ace of hearts.
That's correct.
So because West can't win, West must duck, and you're going to win the king of clubs, pitch a club on the ace of hearts. Come on now, right? And now you can still afford to lose a trick, so you can take care of another losing diamond here, if I'm not mistaken. Let me make sure I'm counting this right. Yeah. Yeah.
You haven't lost one yet.
So let's say you do this, West wins, tries another heart. You know, and now you're in a better spot than you were because, you know, you have those extra chances, right? So you can go about your merry way. You might have roughed out the ace of clubs. It doesn't really matter. The point is that you had to keep the ace of hearts to keep that threat in this position here after you draw your trumps. Because without the ace of hearts, you've already committed to what suit you're pitching. Notice that in each line you have to
Right.
pitch either a club or a diamond. So before making that decision, you allowed West to, you know, consider taking a trick. And regardless of what West did, it was not to his benefit. This is called a fork.
Oh, what?
A fork. It's actually called Morton's fork coup.
ORK?
And this is a deal that Charles Gord and Omar Sharif made a long time ago.
Well, and it's so
Jack?
interesting how oftentimes
That's
you
the
screw
hand.
yourself on the very first trick.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd sure be.
Yeah, the lesson is just to not commit early,
Yeah,
you know?
well, I was reading a hand the other day that you trumped with your 2 on the very first trick, and later on you needed to your two, because you put it
Well,
back
it
back
Yeah,
to the
for
board.
transportation, yeah.
What would your bid be in that situation? Double?
I'm bidding 2 no trump on the first one, and on the second one,
Would it be a double, like when they bid us?
no, because I want to force the game and I have a spade stopper. I just want to get there.
I know, but you could still, you're telling me you have a 4-card major.
Well, that's fine, but if I bid 2 no trump and follow it up with a cube bid, then I'm showing my
That
stopper
was
and
that was my other idea.
I think
was
that's
to
the
bid
best
2
thing to
no
do.
trump.
Doubles are usually for when you have those invitational or less
Okay.
hands. That doesn't mean you
Because
couldn't do it on this,
Well,
but
yeah, I have 11 points, I think, in that hand.
yeah, it's an 11 count. So it's just best to get there and make partner's life simple.
Yeah.
So Phyllis is
Um,
doing this last one.
And the second one is a little bit trickier.
That's the one.
The second one, you could probably do 2 no trump and do the same thing since you have both suits stopped, but you could also pass and try to collect a penalty against 2 hearts if they bid it and then bid 3 no trump afterwards.
Yeah. That's the trick, is knowing when to pass or double
Mm-hmm.
and when to continue.
Yeah.
My partner did that to me and put me in a 5 club bid Friday and I made the dang thing.
5 of minor.
Yeah, I opened 3 clubs.
Didn't even think about 3 no trump.
Oh, no, not with the 3 clubs. I just had clubs and nothing else.
Well, as it happens, it's where you end up on this hand, although there's no preempt. But
4, 7, 9, 13. So this hand opens a diamond. I'm assuming.
well, here, I mean, the bidding won't really matter. South decided to open a weak no trump and North raised.
Oh, okay.
Just, I'm not condoning the bidding, but that's just where you ended
I
up.
understand.
So West leads a heart, and now
Wait, how
again,
many?
Three.
we're in 3. So it's the same issue where we have to figure out, well, how many tricks are there, right?
1,
Okay.
2, 3.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I see
Six,
it.
seven,
It's dark.
eight.
All right.
Only
You've got
8.
2 spades and 2
What did I
hearts
miss? I
there.
counted 7. 1, 2.
Okay, you've got
Oh,
4
yeah.
diamonds
I
in
didn't
each
see the
hand.
Ace of hearts.
You got 4 diamonds in each hand.
8 plus the 4th round of diamonds. hopefully.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're gonna lose a diamond. You're
Yeah,
gonna get 3 diamond tricks. So you're gonna
Yeah.
have 3 clubs, 3 diamonds.
6, 7, 8, 9.
Right. So we can
maybe
agree
another
that
spade, maybe another spade.
we can agree that on this hand, it looks like the best shot is to set up diamonds, right?
Uh-huh.
Because if you try to set up a spade, you're going to lose 3 hearts, a spade, and you still have to
Right.
lose another trick. So down you go. If spades split 3-3, but they won't do that most of the time, you're fine. But diamonds split 3-2 more often, so it looks like it's right to work on those first. Notice that you have to give up the lead regardless of which suit you lead. So
What was the opening lead? 5 of
5 of
hearts.
hearts.
So, one thing that you might do is assume that hearts are 4-4. And that's not a bad line, but there's actually something better you can do, right? Because if hearts are 4-4, who cares, right? You're just gonna,
You're
you
gonna
know,
lose 3 tricks.
yeah, you'll lose 4 tricks of the diamond setup, and you know, there it goes. So, the trouble is when they're 5-3, right? Because now you need to worry about, well, if whoever has 5 hearts, here it's West, gets in,
Yeah.
then down I go, right? So after ducking a couple rounds of hearts, you should be accustomed to, how do you set up the diamond suit without letting West on lead, right? Because that's really the trouble we have here, is we need to set up our diamond suit, but we can't let West win. So what's the correct way to play from here?
But then dummy with 6. Oh, no, because you're gonna lose no matter what. You can't set it up because they've got the jack, 3rd. And the queen 2 on the other side.
So when you get stuck in a situation like this, it sometimes just helps to think about, well, what are my options, right? And it may sound silly, but consider everything. So if I play the ace, king, and a small diamond, could that work?
It could.
If East has 3 diamonds, yeah, but if West has 3 diamonds, it's not going to do me any good. So for the moment, let's just disregard that as an option. What happens if I cash the ace of diamonds and then play a small diamond?
Yeah.
But you're still Have you
Right.
lost, you haven't lost
West-
the ace yet. Have you
East
lost
can't
the ace?
let
Oh, the queen.
West win.
I see what you're
Right.
saying.
On this layout, when East has Queen small,
Queen
you'll,
has-
East won't
yeah.
be able to return
Yeah.
a heart. So that would be fine too. The trouble is again that you don't know that. What if West is the queen? West might, go up with the queen and take that. So, and that should make you realize that any time that West has the queen here, like protected, you're stuck. So you can kind of disregard that distribution, right? Because there's nothing you can do against that. So, assuming that East is the queen now, per our thinking, does that help you with thinking about, well, how do I play this?
Yeah, you get an extra diamond trick. If you play the ace and the small one.
Well, the trouble though is
I
sometimes
can't see it, I can't find it.
sometimes East is attuned to what's going to happen, right? Because if you play the ace of diamonds, West is going to pitch the jack, showing the 10, and East is going to be like, oh crap, partner might be able to get in with a diamond, and so he'll unblock his diamond. This is kind of an advanced play, but East doesn't really have anything to lose by pitching this, provided that he's aware of what's going on in the hand, right? Because the Queen of Spades might be a trick. The Queen of Diamonds was, if North kept leading up to it, was going away anyway. So, and now declare is hopeless because, again,
Got
West
three
gets in because he has 3 diamonds. So, the thing in common with all of those lines is that we're leading from the south hand first. What we want to do is lose the trick we have to lose in diamonds to East. And so, with our assumption that East is the Queen of Diamonds, let's just go to dummy and lead a diamond. If East plays the Queen, we duck, and now we're okay.
Yeah.
Let's say East doesn't play the Queen, though. Now we have to win and do the same thing again, right? Here, East is Queen Doubleton and is forced to play it, so we can duck and sigh of relief, right? If East played low again, you would have to hope that East had Queen third, because again, if West has 3 diamonds, then you're toast. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is another, you can call it an avoidance play, but the idea is very similar to our last example where we led through somebody who had a key honor. And notice that we were applying a lot of principles we learned earlier. We ducked a bunch of rounds of hearts, we counted our tricks, and we realized that the diamond suit was the best one to set up. And the trouble, though, is that we have to lose a trick to the right person, which is East. Right? So there's a lot going on in this hand. And when you make the necessary assumptions that East has the Queen of Diamonds and West can't have 3 of them unless, it's a situation like this, you can get to this idea where I'm going to lead through East.
And leave from the dummy.
Right. Because that's what dummy's there for, right? I mean, this isn't euchre where you're leading out of your hand, right?
That's
You
right.
play euchre?
I used to. I was okay at it, but it's been a long time.
I went out
Yeah.
to California, and my son's friends all play, and they taught me, and they said, you caught on pretty quick. I said, I play bridge, this is kind of
You
easy.
just teach them bridge, like, all right, it's time to return the favor, right?
Yeah, they wanted me, I said, it can't be.
Not
done."
in one night.
Well, not one night.
Yeah.
That's what people don't understand. They want you to teach them how to play it, so they like Scrabble.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, like, I mean, you get this bridge in a day format that will get you around to some of the basics, but it's one of those games where you can play it, but you're not going to ever be a really good player in one day. It takes a while.